Last week, we introduced the graph model, and these graph models can exist in different form. But at the end of the day, you should know that these graph models just help you to find a proper definition or proper decomposition of the joint distributions. And we have introduced that the joint distribution is a key for all kinds of analysis, especially for the complex systems. I will give the example that if you have a UAV, and this UAV can have multiple dimensions, and these multiple dimensions, basically, the correlation can be quite complex. And without any prior, probably we will decompose the joint distribution into a set of conditional probabilities randomly or arbitrarily, and that leads to quite a high space complexity. You can take a reference of what we have discussed as if you, let me try to draw somewhere. If you have if you want to infer the py given px given y, that basically means if you have a condition which is y, and then you have this px given y, right? So that basically happens not in a single dimension, but actually in 2D dimension, right? Besides that, if you have this py x given y and z, that means you need to first define the space of y and z, and then you have this probability distribution of px given the position of y and z, right? Then this distribution will happen in 3D. So basically, the more conditions you have, the higher dimension you should study. To study this high dimension problem that requires high space complexity. To solve this problem, and we can assume many conditional independence conditions. So one of the effective way to describe this independent conditional independency, that's a graph model. That's why the graph model is quite helpful in most of the cases. And we have learned that the graph model can have different formats, like a DAG, which is a directed acyclic graph. Also, there is a Markov field. That means you don't have these arrow directions, etc. We will introduce further some of the examples with applications. Before we further go on with the lecture, we can check the lecture questions we should finish by the previous week. I'm sorry that previously on the Canvas system, the lecture question 3 was wrong. That was a wrong file, 12. And I updated that file, so you can see the question now. These are the open questions. If you, just feel free to interrupt with the chat window or raise your hand. So what is the SLAM and its outputs? The SLAM, you can think of this question by yourself first. SLAM is a sentence localization and mapping. Its outputs will be the location and the map. Location or the trajectories and the map. So recap 2, that's a recap from the Bayesian structure. Without any additional conditions, which of the following are correct for random variable ABC, or value ABC? So is that A or B or C? You can type in your answer at the chat window. So A is P. The joint distribution ABC is a PA, PB given A, C given AB. So A is correct, and B is also correct. Right? B is also correct. And PB, A given B, A given C. A given C. All these are correct. So what you can infer from the following equation, PABC is a PB times PA given C, PC. So what do you have? That means what? PN given C and PC, this is a PAC, right? So that means AC, if that's event, another event is B. These two events, they are independent. Recap 3, please give a possible decomposition of P ABC given D. This can be done arbitrarily, right? So you can have PA times PB given A and PC given AB. And now you have D as a condition, right? That means you can insert the D to the right side of the bar. Okay. Then this decomposition is easy. So just consider the event on the right side of the bar as background knowledge. Recap 4. How do you get PA given C, PC from P ABC? And that's what's that? That should be this part is a PAC, right? So you should have PAC is a marginalization over B, and then the joint distribution of PAC. Right? Consider all the cases of B. Okay, so this is also simple. Great. Last question. This question to let you to have some brain exercise. So this one is calculation of this story. I have a question. So basically, here is a list. In the list, you have 3 questions. The first one is what is PGSR? Second and third. Right? You have 3 questions. The story is like if you have a sprinkler that will spray water. You consider this is a sprinkler on the grass, right, on the grassland, and you may also check the status of grassland, and also you know probably some weather conditions. Right? The weather condition can change. So overall, in this case, you have 3 random variables. There is a S, and there is R. R means whether it rains, and you have a G. Right? G means whether the grass is wet or not. Right? Okay, you have these 3 random variables. And then for each random variable, you have 2 states, right? All these are discrete random variables. The states are, firstly, for the random variable R, you have these 2 states, right? Clear everything. That means the probability that it rains is 0.2, and the false case is it will not rain. Right? It doesn't rain. That's 1 minus 0.2 is 0.8. And so under this condition, there are two more events related to this. So there is maybe you want to turn on the sprinkler to spray some water to wet the grass, in case it will be too dry, right? So given the condition of rain, as you can see, this is a probability of S given R, right? This is a probability of S given R. Given it rains, whether it will turn on the sprinkler, we have this probability, right? So with the R having different values, so R can be true or false, right? That's the R. R can be any of these. Given this condition, the probability that S equals to true, that means it will turn on the sprinkler, or even not turn it on, which is F, you have this probability, right? So you can see that given the rain is true, that means it rains, and the probability to turn on the sprinkler is very low, right? The probability that is off, F, that is very high, right? When it rains, probably you don't turn on the sprinkler. And a third variable is whether the grass will be wet. Whether the grass will be wet. And you can see that basically you need to define a three-dimensional table, right? Three-dimensional table given the conditions of sprinkler and rain. Okay, then you have the P of grass will be the states of S and R. Okay, so this is the system we will study. This is the system we will study, and the question is, firstly, how can you write out the joint distribution? What is the joint distribution in this case? Can you type in the chat? Type into the chat window. So what is PGSR? So as you have already a graph, and then this graph already defined the relation among all these random variables, right? Then this joint distribution is what? It's fixed, right? It's fixed. So as a result, great. This is true. Yeah. William gives the correct answer. So it's a PG given SR times PS given R and times PR, right? And then what does this one mean? What does this one mean? Basically, this guy is what? Is this one, right? This one, right? So S is T, R is F, then G is T, right? This is 0.9, right? And what does it mean? It means what? It means you turn on the sprinkler and it not rain, and then the probability to observe that the grass is wet, right? That's 90% of a chance, right? Because you turn the sprinkler on. You have 90% of a chance to see the grass is wet. Okay, maybe you had a sensor on the grass, right? Then this sensor detects the grass is wet. The probability is 0.9. Okay, the probability is 0.9. And the last question, this one, what I marked in red is something I want you to take 1 or 2 minutes to quickly compute. Okay, this one I want you to compute. Firstly, can you write out the equations we want to solve? You see the grass is wet. What is the chance that it rains? You see the grass is wet. Then what's the chance it rains? So what's the problem we try to solve? Can you write it in the window, and then you can do the computation. Can we deduct the probability equation from the direct graph? From the total, San Hongjun, can you repeat your question, please? Because from the test, I cannot fully understand what you mean. So can we deduce any probability equation from directed graph? Yes, you can. That's you can, because yeah, you start with the node without any parents, and then this is that's the node of the R, right? Then you follow all these arrows. Each arrow will define conditional probability. Then you write out all the you write out the joint probability by a product of all these arrows. Right? Yeah, you can get the joint distribution from only the graph. Okay, back to the question. You see the grass is wet. What is the chance that it rained? That's exactly the thing provided by John Kun, right? So given the grass is wet, what's the chance it rained? So can you take some minutes to do the computation? And let's discuss this answer in about 2 or 3 minutes. In 3 minutes, let's say we discuss the answer at 6:22. As you can see, we want to solve R is true given the grass is true. Yeah. So what is that? Okay, okay. Let's discuss the answers. Um, follow what we just follow what we have discussed, right? And on the left side, I believe you can see this window. On the left side, you see that's the graph we will study, and we want to find the answer of this question, right? This question is typically you can understand as R, the probability of rain given given grass is wet, right? So it's nothing else than the joint distribution over the marginal distribution of PG, right? So this is the format you get here. And that's the using the total probability. So that's a sum over what's over S, right? The P of R, G, and S over what? Over PG. So what is a PG? PG is the sum over S and sum over R, right? Sum over S and sum over R. Okay, that means as a solution on the left side, you have the P of R is true, when grass is true, then what? A modernization over S, right? So you need to consider two cases. R is true, this one is true, and the S can be true or S can be false. Okay, over then you need to alter the case of S and R, right? So actually there are 4 different parts, right? So each part will be in the form of joint distribution of PGS. But some of the slight change is where S is the true and R is the true, or S is the true, R is the false, S is the false, R is the true, and S is the false, R is false, right? So all these 4 cases, right? All these cases. And then you can just plug in each part, then you can find the, plug in each part, then you can find the numerical solution, right? So some notes, how can you really compute this joint distribution? For example, this one, how can you compute that? How can you compute that? This part is you have the R, G, S. So basically, that's what we use a joint distribution, right? So you have the PR times P of S given R times the PG given as R. So where do you get these numbers? These numbers, you just see the table, right? See the table, because you have different states for R, S, and T. Okay, that's the table shown in the original question. Okay, that's how you solve this. That's how you solve the problem, right? Great. So if you have any questions, just let me know. Otherwise, we will continue with the lecture. Okay. So last time we stopped somewhere at the where is it? The D-separation, right? D-separation. Well, we gave the example that back to the examples of the sensors and doors. At the state of the door, that determines what the sensors will see. Right? So that's why you have this dash part, this S or SMTs, all these dash parts. Actually, they are observations. Right? They are at the head side. Right? They are not at the tail. Right? So for any arrow, you have a tail and you have a head, right? And a tail and a head. So then the tail is you can call that this is the reason, right? And that's the causal. And then the head part, that's the result, right? That's the consequence. Right? Consequence. So that's you have from that you get the if you put a sensor on the door, you should draw the diagram like this one. Right? It's not the inverse. Right? You cannot get from S to D. Why that? Because what the sensor sees is not the causal. It's not the reason that's why the door is closed or open. Right. So this is important. Right. Sometimes you consider the problem wrongly. Only because you're looking into the question itself too much, right? So if I ask you the question, if the sensor tells you the door is open, what's the probability that the door is open? And then probably you raise the arrow from the sensor to the door. So this is wrong. Right? This is wrong. You should describe the system. Right? You should describe the system instead. Similarly, from other complex graph, we can tell some assumptions from the graph. Also, we can translate from the graph to these assumptions. And we discussed several cases. Some of them can be easily seen, but some of them cannot. For example, these ones, right? Like a given C, A and B, they are conditionally independent. So this is wrong, right? This is wrong. Because if you put one sensor over two doors, and the sensor sees some door is open, if A is closed, then that increases the probability that B will be open, right? So given the C, actually A and B, they are not independent anymore, right? They're not independent anymore. So that's the sum of the little bit more complex cases. And that leads to the results of the concept called deseparation. Yeah, deseparation. What deseparation tells is the conditional independence. Right? Tells the conditional independence of a associated model. In the previous case, actually we can easily tell the convolution on the right directly from the graph. Because of what? Because we can group all these nodes into subgraphs, right? Into subgraph. And you only have limited cases. In a directed graph. Now these cases can be consider you have a non-intersecting subsets of nodes. Right? Non-intersecting subsets of nodes. And S1, S2, and S3. So actually, by checking the directions of the arrows among all these S2, S3, by looking at the directions of arrows, you only have limited cases. Sometimes, if we only check the status of S2, that will be either a so-called, this is called what? This is called head to tail. Head to tail. Why that? Because on the left side it's a head, right? Right side is a tail. This is called head to tail. A second case is so-called tail to tail. Right? Tail to tail. And third case is head-to-head, head-to-head. You only have these three cases in a DAG, right? In a directed acyclic graph. So, and in this definition, we want to define the following two concepts. One concept is called a block. So a path from S1 to S2 is blocked. Sorry. Let me change that a little bit. This should be 2. This is 2. This is 3. And this is 3. Okay. Okay. So the path from S1 to S2 is blocked by S3 if it contains a node that belongs to the first case or the second case. Right? Either it's head-to-head or it's head-to-tail. If that's the case of 1 and 2, then this path is blocked. Okay. Secondly, if the node is head-to-head, that means the third case. This case is special, right? So this is special because we define this blocking condition in a contradictory way, right? So if the node is a head-to-head, then neither the node or its descendants are in S3. This is called a blocked, right? That means the node, if that node is not in S3, then the node is blocking S1 to S2. Okay. For the first two cases is easy, but the key word here is a tail. Tail. As long as you see a tail, either it's head to tail or tail to tail, then this path will be blocked. Right? In the case of 1 and 2, it directly leads to the path is blocked. Right? The second case is if a node is not in this third case, neither this node or its descendants like the children or the children or children, if they are not in the S3, right? Neither the node or its descendants are in S3, then this is called blocked. Okay. So these three conditions, they are defined like this, right? They are defined in a, we can call that they're defined in a weird way, but actually that's how the system is defined. Right? Then you know what is blocked. Right? This is called blocked. Secondly, if all passes blocked, and then that means what? S1 and S2 are deseparated. Right? S1 and S2 are deseparated by S3. Okay, this is called deseparation. Deseparated. Okay, what is a deseparation? Deseparation is equivalent to this conditional independence of the associated model. Right. It's equivalent to conditional independence of the associated model. And this is not true for arbitrary graph. That means the graph is not a DAG, or this graph has some cycles, for example, and models. Right? It's not true for arbitrary graph, but for DAG, at least it's for DAG. This is always true. Right? Okay. So by knowing this, then the problem getting clear, right? So you should know about two concepts. One concept is called blocked. What is blocked? If you see a tail along the path, if you see a tail, then this path is blocked, right? This is clear. Secondly, if along the path you have a head-to-head node, then the one you want to study, like this S3 part, the part you want to study, should not belong to such case. Okay. So actually, this second part is a little bit subtle, right? A little bit subtle, tricky. And this one is easy, right? If you see a tail, then it's blocked, right? If you see a head-to-head, then the node should not belong to the subset or its descendants. Then if all the paths are blocked, then it's called deseparation, or you can say if all the paths are blocked, then that's a conditional independence, right? Conditional independence. I hope this is clear. So when I learned this concept during my PG study, it took me some time to digest, right? But finally, I found the easiest way to understand is first remember, if you see a tail, then it's blocked, right? If you don't see the tail, but you see a head-to-head, and then it should not be part of the descendants. Okay, with this knowledge, and then we can quickly check what we can quickly see the previous assumptions or conclusions, whether they're correct or not. Okay, like if you see along the path of ACE, along this path, right? Because there's a tail at, there's a tail at these locations, right? The C is a head-to-tail node along the path ACE. That means what? That means C is deseparates A and E, right? C deseparates A and E. That means A and E, they will be independent given C, okay? Given C, A and E, they will be conditionally independent. This is okay, and this is clear, right? Okay. Good. Another thing is if you talk about A, B, and F, right? A, B, and F, you can see that here. This is not F, this is E. Right? Let's first look at F. So given F, A and B, given F is what? Because F is not on the path between A and B. Right? Between A and B, there is a path, this is a path, right? F is not on the path, and not, F is not C, and F is not the descendants of C. So F deseparates AB, right? So A and B, they are independent given F, right? This is true. Okay, and this is true. So looking at a different example like this one, given E, checking the relation between A and B should be what? Because A and B, there is a path ACB, and E is the descendant of C. E is the descendant of C. So that means what? A and B, you cannot say that, right? A and B, given E, they are not independent. Yeah, they're not independent. Yeah, they're not independent. Okay, then this is clear, right? This is clear. So then you can easily check all kinds of conditions, right? Let's say between A and F, right? There is a variable B, and there is a tail here. Also, there is another tail. So that means given B, A, and F, they will be conditionally independent, right? Okay. A and F, they are conditionally independent given B. Okay. If you have any question, you can ask. Otherwise, we will continue. And for those who have learned graph model in the past, hopefully this is a quick review of what you have learned. But some of the students, probably this is the first time you study, and you should pay more attention to this, right? Because later, when we reintroduce some of the algorithms, so we will use the concept of deseparation a lot. Okay, let's continue. Another type of network is called Markov random field. It's called Markov random field. The Markov random field, the difference between a Markov random field and the DAG is that you don't have any arrows anymore, right? You don't have the causal and the consequence, right? You don't have this definition anymore. Typically, MRF, Markov random field, is used for computer vision problems, right? Also, you can use that for other problems. Like extension from the MRF is a CRF, right? Conditional random field. But MRF is the basic representation of image, especially the correlation between the pixels in an image. So for the Markov random field itself is also this network, and it's a partial ordering between all variables, and the D-separation indicates the conditional independence, similar to GAG. Then the cases for pixels of a camera or the cell in space. So all these cannot be easily described not by DAG, right? The reason is the local neighborhood just defines the properties of a pixel or define the properties of a cell. I will provide you some supplementary material, which is easier for you to follow in this direction. And firstly, we introduce the general properties of MRF. So MRF, Markov random field, is an undirected graph model. And the D-separation and the independence, you have the similar definition. You have a similar definition, but you have some specialties. Firstly, because you don't have any head-to-head case, you only have tail-to-tail case. You have tail-to-tail case. Right. If you consider this is a local area of a image, right? Or image, and the random variables at each circle can show some special properties of an image. And then if I ask you to propagate or transmit the message among all these pixels in the neighborhood, then you don't have a dedicated direction of this message passing. Why that? Because all these are pixels. Right? All these are pixels. Let's say if we want to do something like a semantic segmentation. Semantic segmentation means if you give me a picture, I want to tell in this picture which part is sky, which part are trees, which part you have a dog or cats, etc. Right? You want to assign a label to each pixel, and you cannot say that which pixel determines the semantic label of others, right? Because they are co-independent. As this complete local area defines this property. So you don't have this causal and consequence relationship. That's why you don't have a head-to-head issue. And for the D-separation of Markov random field, it's blocked by S3 if it contains a node in S3. Right? So this is quite intuitive. They don't have the case of head-to-head. They only have the first two cases in the D-separation definition. And another thing is important is called Markov blankets. That's a set of neighborhoods and also the parents or descendants of the neighborhoods. Okay, and also the joint probability is not easy to use a Bayes rule. Typically, we use a product of potential functions over the cliques. So this is the overall introduction. Later, we will go into the examples and how do we do the computation of MRF. Okay, this is the overall properties. And by reading this page, you may have several questions already, right? So why there is no head-to-head issue, what is Markov blankets, and then what is potential function, and what is a clique? You just carry these questions, and then we can go to the introduction. Okay, firstly, we introduce several concepts. This graph is a Markov random field. This is a typical Markov random field. You see that you have the correlation among the random variables, right? The correlation among random variables, that's the edges between all these random variables. And how can we compute the what? Joint distribution, right? From the previous lectures, we know that we care about the joint distribution a lot, right? If you have a joint distribution, then you know everything about the system. Maybe the complexity, computational complexity is high, or the space complexity is high, but as long as you have this joint distribution, you can find at least a representation, right? Then you can simplify the representation. So the joint distribution of MRF, the joint distribution of MRF is defined as, this is a joint distribution, defined as a product of the so-called potential functions, the psi c, right? Phi c. So this is the potential function. So this is called potential functions, right? The phi c. But what is the potential function? The potential function, you can understand it as an energy function. So this is an energy function. This energy function basically defines the similarities. You define the similarity. If the two states, they are more similar, and then you have a higher score in this potential. Okay. So then VCs, in this case, or what are these VCs? Potential function over VC, right? VCs are the variables in each of the maximal cliques, C. And the phi c is the potential function of C. Then what is a maximal clique? Right? What is a maximal clique? So here comes more and more concept, right? So we just From the joint distribution, we know we need a potential function over a maximal clique. And what is a clique, right? Clique is a set of nodes. They're all connected to each other. Right, set of nodes all connected to each other. For example, in this graph, what is a clique? What is a clique? Like all nodes, the set of nodes all connect to each other. Right? For example, A and B, right? A and B, this is already a clique, okay? Or CEF, right? They're interconnected. Or this ABCD, right? This ABCD is also a clique because they are all interconnected. Then how about A, B, C, D, E? If you include the E, if you say A, B, C, D, E, then this is not a clique, right? It's not a clique. Why that? Because E is not connected to A, E is not connected to B. These two cases they don't exist, right? So the cliques are these ones, right? ABC or CD, or it is ABCD or EF, right? So the maximal clique means a clique not contained into other cliques, not contained into another clique. So in this case, the maximal clique here will be you have ABCD and you have CDEF. But these are two maximal clique. Good. So what's the joint distribution? Joint distribution of all these 6 random variables, ABCDF. What's the joint distribution of this 6 random variable? This is described as this one, right? The P ABCDEF is the product of this potential function over the maximal clique. And there's normalizer. You don't care about the normalizer in most of the cases because no matter how you analyze the states, maybe A is a true or false or 1 or 2, doesn't matter. It doesn't change the evidence, right? Z is the evidence. Okay. Where Z is the evidence, it's like we want to compute PA given B, then you have the PAB over PB, right? Similarly to these cases, right? You see here is a marginalization, and here is a joint distribution in the form of a joint distribution, right? Similarly to that. So usually you don't care about this Z much. Right? This is the normalizer. And then the joint distribution over ABCDEF will be the product of the two potential functions. Okay, later I'll give you an example of what is the joint distribution of this potential function. Okay, but before that example, we should look at some of the problems, right? So if you want to define some clique, let's say I want to define this clique, the potential function over maximal clique ABCD, then I need to consider the states of the 4 random variable ABCD, right, at the same time, right, at the same time. That means what? Similar to last week, right? So you need to consider a high dimensional, this is the high dimensional memory cost, right? High dimensional memory cost. 4 dimensions seems not so complex, but you need to consider the cardinality, right? The overall cases for each of random variables. Right? You need to find the combinations among all these dimensions in A, dimensions in B, C, and D. You have the cross terms for all these 4 cases. So this can be quite complex, quite complex. Okay, so to reduce this complexity, and typically we want to do some further decomposition, For example, we know ABCD is over a clique, and generally, if this is a part of an image, we maybe don't care about the relation between the two random variables in the diagonal direction, right? Like AD or BC. Right? These directions typically we can ignore. This is a so-called for image processing is a so-called the first ordered or second ordered neighborhood, right? First order, second order neighborhood. And B to A, this is the first order neighborhood. C to A is first order neighborhood. On the diagonal direction, this is a second order neighborhood. Right? Okay. In the matrix world, and then you can easily tell who will be the first ordered neighborhood, second order neighborhood, and then we can say that the second order neighborhood is some neighborhood we don't care. Okay. If we can have such an assumption, and then we can simplify the problem to some case like this. We know that we don't have the cross term anymore. We don't have this cross term anymore. Okay. Then what will be the maximal clique? The maximal clique in this case is much less complex than the previous one. Right? So you only have what? The maximal clique. You only have these ones, right? You only have these ones. Because you don't have the cross term, right? You don't have a diagonal term. And then what's the joint distribution? Joint distribution of all these states. That will be the potential function over AB, AC, BD up to all the cases to the end. Right? Okay. It seems that you need to define more phi functions, right? You define more of these potential functions. But actually, you can see that previously it's a 4-dimensional function. Now you only have a 2-dimensional function. In terms of the representation, it's much easier. Right? And the worst case is you define a quadratic table, right? You only have 2 cases A and B, then you compare all the cross terms. You can define this phi AB function easily in the matrix, 2-dimensional matrix will do. Okay, then this definition is much easier than the case of phi ABCD, right? Because this is a 4D. This is 4D, and this one is only 2D. Okay. So from this definition, now you know what is a clique, what is the maximal clique, and a little bit about how can you compute the joint probability, a little bit about potential function, where you don't see what is a potential function, but that's already something sufficiently to let you have a general understanding of what is MRF. Then taking this to an example. Let's find an example. Before that, it's 7 o'clock. Let's have a 5-minute break. Right, 5-minute break to 7:05. Right, 7:05. Okay, let's have a quick break to 7:05. I will pause the. Record. Sorry. Okay. Previously, we know about the DAG, right? You already know this. You have random variables. These random variables from the rainy weekday to have a party. Okay. So you can define all these cases. You can draw this. Okay. And then, what is MRF? Right? MRF. Let's consider the case of image segmentation, and as I mentioned in the previous lecture. That means we want to assign a label to each of the pixels. Right? Nowadays, a lot of people solve this problem using a deep learning problem, right? Because we have seen so many of these examples. If you're interested, you can also check our websites. You already know that, runlab.com, the research websites. We also do the real-time image-based segmentation for the autonomous driving, right? So we segment where are the trees, where is the traversable road, and which pixels in the image are cars, which pixels are pedestrian, etc. Right? But here we simplify the problem a little bit. Simplify the problem not to multi-label labeling, not multi-label classification, but only simply into a foreground background detection. Right? So after this problem is simplified, then we can find out how can we define these potential functions easily. So let's say you have this image on the left side, and this image is a bird in the background, right? And then what is the space we want to find? So we want to define an energy function, the potential function, E of x, and E of x is nothing else than from 0, the two labels, 0 and 1. Right? We define 0 as foreground. That is the red color to mark, right? 0 is a foreground, 1 means the background, right? We look into detail of this image, where many pixels are here, right? We extend each of pixel here, and this is the neighborhood of pixel arrays, right? Neighborhood of pixel arrays. And then you want to assign a label, right? We want to assign a label to each of the pixel. But in the more realistic consideration is what? You consider this is a label. This label will determine the what you see as a pixel. Right? It's like you have the state of the door, you have observation of the door, you want to detect the hidden, the states of the door, right? So if the label is hidden, and then this label must determine some pixels, right? And then you can reuse this, the observation, which is the pixel, to do the inference on the labels. Okay, this is a more complete graph. But if you only look at these states, and typically we just want to assign 0 or 1s to each of these positions. Now, how can we do the assignment? So we can hand mark some of these foreground and background. Right? This is the typical operation we had at all time. Right? So we use a green, the blue color to quickly label. Okay, I consider this is the background, and the red stroke quickly label, that's the foreground. That's the foreground, right? And then we can say each pixel, you will have the so-called unary cost. You have a unary cost. That determines, they're defined by the pixel color, right? Pixel color. Because some vivid color or the colors along this red stroke, if you sample from this red stroke, and those colors have some, like some prior, right? This prior defines, if you have a pixel with this color around this red stroke, and then it's higher probability to be a foreground. It's a high probability to be a foreground. And then you can compare the colors, right? By comparing these colors, and then you will have the unary cost, right? Unary cost. That leads to this cost map. This is the cost map. The darker color means it's negative, bright color means it's positive. That means you get a higher chance to be a foreground. But in this case, you see, even on the background, you have some local areas has a similar color as the one you labeled with the red stroke. Okay, and this is normal, right? This is normal. So we need to do what? We want to look at not only what happens at each pixel, like this xi. We not only look at the energy function defined at each pixel, but we also look at the correlation, right? Correlation. So if you take the arg minimum of this energy function, we can already get the one on the right by looking at only the pixel column, right? But that's not enough. We want to look at the correlation between the pixels, right? Xi and xj. So in this case, this is what? This is a click, right? This is already a click. So we want to find out the definition over all the possible clicks. And then we can define overall our cost function. Right? Okay. This is the way we use, this is a MRF to represent the relations between the pixel labels. Okay. And when we look at the correlation among the pixels, we get the discontinuity cost. Discontinuity cost. Like checking the similarity between two random variables, and then this serves as a second part of the energy function. Okay. Good. If we extend that absolute mark to a different format, right? Just multiply with the sign itself, and then we can easily improve from the old solution based on only the unitary cost to this one with the smoothness prior. Right. Okay. And how can we solve the problem? Right? That's how we model the problem. Right? In the middle, you have an MRF. In the middle, you have an MRF. In the MRF, you define the unitary cost, the potential function, etc. And how can we solve the problem? There are many methods. Right? We will not introduce these methods in further. So I will upload this file to the canvas as your extended reading material. Right? So at all time, you have the max flow, the mean cost max flow method or graph cost method. And even up to now, some of these methods are quite efficient, quite effectively efficient. Okay. So that's some extended material for the MRF, especially the definition of the potential functions. So back to the lecture. You see that every circle here, every node will be a random variable, right? In the previous image example, each of these circles will be a label. That will be a label. We want to make sure that this label, the similarity between the labels can serve as a prior. So then we want to find the joint distribution of all these labels so that you get the foreground and background separately, right? So how can we find the joint distribution? You need to define the potential function over these clicks, and then you use the product of all potential functions serve as the joint distribution. Okay, that's the some basic properties of MRF. So compare with DR DAG, the directed acyclic graph, and you can see that the key difference is now you don't have an arrow, right? Then you don't have the causal, and then you don't have the causal, and then the consequence. So for the expressivity, and some models can be preferred, preferably expressed by Bayes network. Some of them by Markov random field. And sometimes you use both, right? Because you can use a combined representation. As I mentioned, you can say that's a correlation between the labels, and based on each label, you can have an arrow. Then you have some observations, right? Some observations. So you can also use this combined representation. But when we look at the conditional independence, for example, in a local neighborhood of a bunch of pixels, image pixels, you care about the local neighborhood only, right? Because when we define the cliques, it's only in the neighborhoods, right? We don't care about additional pixels. Like when we look at the relation between A and D, especially when we look at the label of A, we don't care about what's the label about the E, right? So we don't need this information, right? We don't need this information. So, and the whole representation is also Markov. So if we only look at the conditional independence for DAG on the left side, we know that given C, A and B, they are not independent, right? Not independent. The reason we explained many times. And in this case, the lower case, given the C, A and B, they will be independent, right? Because in the sense of I want to pass some information, right? This information will be blocked by C. This information is blocked by C. Why is it blocked by C? Because it has tails. Right? Any of its tail will block the information. Right? The path is blocked. Okay, path is blocked. And on the right side, given C, let's say given only C, A and B, A and B, the relation is given C. A and B, they are what? They are not independent yet, right? Given C, because there is another path, right? That path can go through D, right? Given C only, you don't have the A and B, they are independent, right? Because you should consider the cases of D. So with a combined event, right? You have the C and D as a joint event, they happen together, and then A and B, they are conditionally independent. Conditionally independent. For this case, given C and D, because you have C here, right? If you know about C, then A and B, they are not independent, right? So if this is the S2, this is the S1, this is the S3, right? So you want to look at S1 to S3. What's the relation given S2, right? So you have C. C is the descendants, or is itself is in a subset S2, right? So that's why S2 cannot be separate A and B. Cannot be separate A and B. That's why given CD, A and B, they will not be independent, right? Because of C. Right? This should be clear. And so far, we only talk about the modeling. I try not to introduce too much about inference because firstly, it's more important to know about the model. Secondly, other courses, if you're interested, other courses about graph model can give you a further better example in the inference. Also, I will upload the slides you just see. In that slide, I also introduce some inference material. So the inference in a graph model is similar to this algebraic representation. We want to consider a summation over all the free variables. This is called what? Called marginalization, right? Marginalization, or using total probability, right? And we want to exploit the independence and rearrange the sum for the quick computation, right? So that happens the same for all the inference for both graphical model and this algebraic representation. But indeed, we will give some quick example when we come to the model like HMM or the dynamic Bayes network, right? We can quickly represent what's the computation. And on the trees, that means we start with the origin, like this one. We start with the origin and consider you have some message you want to pass around, right? Some message you want to pass around. And we're following the direction of the message passing, and we can do the integral, right? We can do the integral. That leads to the so-called many algorithms, right? Like a sum product algorithm or belief or propagation and many more, right? Okay. Just these are some names for the algorithms, right? And on a more general graph, sometimes we want to exploit this junction tree. And sometimes we use this loopy propagation, which is an approximation of the algorithm. So some of you may know of these names. If you think it's necessary to know, you can either check other material or you can write me email. Okay, this is about inference. We don't want to spend too much time in the inference. There are existing algorithms to solve it. Especially nowadays, you can get a lot of libraries. Once you define the graph, define the cost function, the potential function, and then you will have the inference come automatically. Okay, here is a quick summary on this graphical model. We learned about graph model in general is graphical representation or probability representations. We introduced Bayes network, which is a GAG. Also, we introduced MR. Okay, that's a summary of the previous hour and some of the content of last week. Okay. There are some two questions. Question 4. Okay, you can look at these questions and try to type in some answers on the chat window. Right? So which of the following can be true? Looking at the graph on the left, this graph. Which of the following can be true? D separates B and F. Is this true? D separates B and F. This is true, right? This is true. Thank you, thank you. Many answers. Okay, thank you. C separates AV and E. This is also true. This is also true. Okay, these two are easy. And then C is A and B are independent given C. A and B are independent given C. This is wrong. Right? This is wrong. And A and B are independent given nothing. A and B are independent given nothing. Given nothing, then A and B, yeah, this is true, right? C and D, they are independent given B. This is also true, right? Because you have the tails, right? You have tails here, the tails. C and D are independent given nothing. If you don't have anything, then this is true, right? This is true. Consider this is the door. You have two sensor readings, and these two sensor readings, they are not related, right? Not related. They're just two separate sensors. Right? Given nothing, C and D, they should be independent. Okay. The question 2, this separation indicates conditional dependencies. Is this true or false? This is false, right? It's an independency, right? It's not dependencies. You cannot, from this separation, you cannot tell who and who these two are dependent. Right? You can only tell independence. Okay. But seeing from the last page of the inference, I just want to quickly recap, right? So for the graph inference, which method are the graph inference method? You know, some A is a B for propagation, right? So this is a graph model inference method. Right? This is true. This is also true, right? This is also true. back propagation is not on the graph, right? It's on the neural network, right? It's an artificial neural network. And the marginalization, you can, it's not an algorithm, right? It's not an algorithm. Marginalization is the output of the, or it's the result of the total probability, right? Okay. And this is not specialized for graph inference. Okay. So that's some quick tests. Okay. So far, we introduced several models about the graph model, but we didn't introduce the data series. Didn't introduce anything related to time. Okay, we can have a model from A to B, right? But what happened over time? Over time. So that part is unknown. Right? That part is unknown. And this problem is important for robotic application, right? Because robots, usually they work in the real world. In the real world, there always a time. The time is always matters. And we want to grant the timestamp to each of these random variables. Okay? Okay. So that's the thing we will discuss as follows. Okay, how could we introduce time? This is called a dynamic Bayes network. You already know this model from the localization lecture. But that model, we introduced how can we describe the belief, right? How can we describe belief using a recursive algorithm? You can use the t-1 to infer what happens for time t, and then t-2 for t-1, and then you can originate back to the origin. But another types of dynamic network is you probably don't need the control variables, right? Then we want to look at which one is the simplest. Okay. Simplest. So most simple, the simplest structures for the Bayes network. Okay. By checking that, we know that per instance, if you have one variable, for instance, we want to know about the states, and then we want to know about the observations, right? If this is the case, that means you have the states. So probably the state. So D0, D1, D2, etc. And then associate to each of the states. We have all the sensor readings. Okay. So any solution related to this model, is related to what? The joint distribution. Right? The joint distribution. This is the key. So if you know the joint distribution, and then you know the answer to all questions. But the problem is, if you really want to compute the joint distribution in this way, and then you do the marginalization, it requires a huge complexity, right? Space complexity. You have seen the demo of the UEV. And the inference requires a summation over so many variables, right? Requires a summation over so many variables. So we want some easier representations. Right? Easier representation includes the dynamic programming, etc. Right? We need some algorithms to simplify this computation. And HMM, in this case, is the simplest model we can have a look. So you may know about HMM from other lecture, but so we'll try to explain HMM Also, it's a pros and cons, right, in this lecture. Also, I will give you some applications of this dynamic Bayes network. But not only the localization and mapping, also some other applications. I think this page should come before that. So here we want to add on these Markov assumptions. So in network, we look at the random variable A. The Markov assumption basically defines a subset of the nodes. These nodes includes all the parents, you see, all the parents, and then the descendants, the children, and also other parents or the children, other parents of the children. Okay, this is a Markov blanket. This is the Markov blankets in a complex network like the one we shown here. So what it defines is you can infer the states of A by knowing only the Markov blankets. Okay. Because you see, you have these tails, right? You have these tails. Because of these tails, this Markov blanket already separates, deseparates the rest of the world to A. Right? That means if you want to infer anything happen to A, maybe giving the whole world as a condition to A, is nothing else than the P of A given the Markov blankets of A. Right? What are the Markov blankets is the parents and the descendants, those are children, and the other parents of children. Right? Okay. So this is important. We will use this result for all the analysis of the Bayes network as well. Bayes network as well. The dynamic network as well. Okay. Okay. Then what is HMM model? Some of you already know. We can first have a look. What is HMM, and then what are the typical algorithms that we can use for HMM, and then we extend HMM to a wider range of application. It's not only one hidden state to one observable, but you have many hidden states per each time instance, and you have multiple observations as well. Right? So we start everything from simple to difficult. Right? So the simplest form of HMM, we can define that as you have the following random variables. Right? You have certain observations, Z. And each of these observations is associated with one hidden state, or we call it latent state, right? Hidden state, which is not directly observable. This is the random variables, right? So you see on my drawing previously, right? Along time, right? So this is a time. Along time, you have random variable. Maybe this is xi, this is xi minus 1, this is I plus 1, that's z, I minus 1, z, I plus 1. Right? So you can see you need some random variables, right? The ingredients is, first you have some random variables. Secondly, you have the so-called transition model, right? What is a transition model? Transition model means based on the previous state, xi minus 1 or k minus 1, how can I infer the current state? So this is the pxk given xk minus 1. Okay, nothing else than this blue arrow. Right? This is the blue arrow here. Another thing is called observation model. Right? Observation model is this one. Right? All these are called observation model, showing green. This part is given the hidden states. What's the probability that you can observe a certain to have some certain observation? Right? So observation only depends on the current states. Okay. Of course, when you see the transition model and the observation model, you can see that you have tails. These tails help you to separate some interesting random variable to the rest of the world. Okay. As for definition, you have variables, you have transition model, you have observation model. Right? Don't be go on. And for HMM, that means you have discrete states. And the observation models, they are application dependent. Right? So let's say if you have 7 states of your model, that means the current system state can stay at number 1 or number 2 up to number 7. But you have a certain transition probabilities, right? For example, if your current state is number 3, you probably next state will be number 4 or number 7. But you cannot jump directly to number 5. Okay, so you have this transition model among the states. And the states in this case they are discrete, right? In this case, that can only be 1, 2, 3, up to 7. Okay. Later, we will also extend this to a continuous model. But so far, it's discrete. So far, it's discrete. And all the nodes are states, edges are possible transitions, right? For example, previously, if it's 3, and then the next stage is 4, this is possible. This is possible. And then this is a positive number. Okay? But from 3 to 7, we can assign that, right? This probability from state 3 to 7, this is 0. That means this one will not work, right? We can define all these transitions. Okay. So for the parameters, we want to define the prior, what are the states, the initial distribution, the initial distribution of the states. Like initially, are you in state 1 or state 2, or with multiple options, right? Maybe you have 50% of chance at state 1, 50% of chance at state 3, as long as it's sum to 1, right? So we can have the initial states. Right? This is the initial state. In this example, if you have the state 1 and state 3 as a 0 to 5, then the prior will be, well, you have a vector. This vector at state 1 is 0 to 5, state 2 is 0, state 3 is 0 to 5, 0, 0, 0, etc. Right? You have 7-dimensional initial states. And then you have a transition model. That's a matrix. Right? This matrix defines from the k minus 1 to time k what's the transition probability. And then you have the observation model. Sometimes this is also called emission model. This is also called emission model. But just different names. Right? It's alias of the models. Good. All these. And then what can HMM solve? Right? HMM can solve many problems, right? Depends on how can you form up the equations. Right? If you want to use all these observations to solve the states, a sequence of observations to solve the current states, it's more or less like a tracking problem. It's a tracking problem. Like if you want to track a missile, And based on what you observe in the previous long enough sequence, you want to predict where is the current position of the missile. Right? So this is a tracking problem. And it requires to know, so it should be know, required to know the initial state, transition model, and then the observation model. Right? As for base filter, we know that this is similar to what you learn as a localization, right? Given all the previous observations, I want to know the current position. Right? So you can solve that using a recursive algorithm. Right? Recursive algorithm. We already know this. A second type of problem can be solved by HMM is if you have a sequence to sequence. Right? Previously, it's a sequence for points, right? Now you have a sequence to sequence. Based on the sequence of observations, I want to know the sequence of states. Then what's that? This recognition program can use for natural language process, right? So I'm speaking something, I try to say something, and this something is hidden. Right? I want to infer what this guy is talking about, given the audio signal I received. Right? That's the observation. Based on the observation, I want to infer what does the guy say. Right? This part is hidden. Right? It's not directly observable. You can directly observe all this audio. Right? You can observe this audio to predict what it says. So it's similar to the previous program, but you need more computation. And this can also be used for prediction, right? So that means here I can also add the xk plus 1, right? Based on what you said previously, I can try to predict what happened next, right? So that's also one way to model the program, right? You have modeling for tracking, modeling for recognition, and the third category, large categories of problem you want to solve is the transition and observation model. For example, you only have Z, and you know some training data, which is groups of Z and X. You know probably K of this. Then how could you compute A? Right? How could you compute A? Or just a 5? How can you compute this? Right? And this is a third type of problem, right? From data to a model. And that's some objectives. And these problems seems they are quite different, right? Seems they are quite different, but actually, all these problems are similar. If you know how would you do the inference over a graph? Conceptually, I give you one example. One is a forward computing example, and then one Viterbi program. And then I give you some realistic examples, right? How can we do the vehicle tracking using HMM model? So at the start, this is the simplest model we can think of, right? You have 7 states. So currently, what's the current state? The current state is not a single state, not necessarily a single state. The state is this one. Okay, that's the state. I have 70%, 75% of a chance to be at state 3. Right? And I have a 10% of a chance to be here. And I have a 10% of a chance to be here. Also, there are 5% of a chance to be here. So later we will use a similar model. This one is easier. So I'm quite likely to be here. Quite likely to be here, 75% of chance. So how can we do the prediction over the graph, right? So what will be my next state? What will be my next state? Then I want to use transition matrix, right? Assume that you know this transition matrix. If you know this A already, this is known. This is known, and just look like this one. So what you can do, you can directly multiply A with this is P, right? If this is the PK, this is the PK plus 1. How can you compute the PK plus 1 from PK? It is simply PK plus 1, this vector is A times P of K, right? Very easy. And then what is PK plus 2? Just A square PK, right? So this prediction over graph is easy if you know this A. A is known and static. If A is known and static, then this problem is easy. Okay. Secondly, following our previous discussion here, let's solve the second one. The first part is the prediction, right? Is the prediction or tracking. The second one, we want to look at what will be the best sequence X to describe this set. Let's look at this problem. That can be solved by the so-called Viterbi algorithm. The objective is to find the best state sequence given a set of observations. We can use that for gesture recognition, speech recognition, the vehicle tracking, and for many things, right? So if you have a dynamic process, and then you want to know about the states transition, the trajectories of the states, you can use this algorithm. You can use this algorithm. One thing I want to remind you is because you only have from this X to Z, you don't have the control, right? Remember that you don't have the control, okay? Don't have this. So if you don't have the control, that means you can only work as a third-person view, right? You can only observe the system by looking at the Z. That's the only observation you have, right? So you don't have complete knowledge about the control. Okay, this is something I want to remind you. Like for speech recognition, you cannot control what others talked about. Right? You can only observe from an audio signal and try to compute or try to infer what it actually says. So as an intuition, for a single observation, the best states of given states is to take the maximum, take the maximum of the observation model. It's easy. And if you know the best state sequence to reach any state after k observations, not a single observations, then after k plus 1 observation, we can compute the probability of k plus 1 state using the transition model and the observation model, right? So this is a long paragraph, and then next slide will introduce how. Right? Next slide will introduce how. So we want to use the k plus 1 observation, use that k plus 1 timestamp observation to compute the k plus 1 states. Okay, compute the k plus 1 states. And then from the future k plus 1 states, you can trace back to the k states. Okay, that means we first do some prediction to the future, and then use what we predict. Then you maximum the likelihood, right? Maximum the likelihood, and then you trace back the current state. Because you don't know the current state, and then you can use the current state to predict what will happen next. Then you use what you observe at the next timestamp to infer what's the state. So next timestamp, then you trace back to the current state. Right? So this problem is subtle. And in the graph is like, I want to know about k, know about this state. Right? It is difficult. So I do what? I will predict what will happen on k plus 1. right, at k plus 1. And based on what you observe at the k plus 1, then I can have better understanding. So this is another way back, right? From that, I can have a better understanding to this k plus 1. And then I trace back to the state k. Okay, that's what the Viterbi algorithm did. Okay, there's a trace back. Okay, next page, we just show how it gets computed. Let's say you have a model with 3 states, 1, 2, 3. 3 states, 1, 2, 3. You can observe A or B in state 1. You can observe states in B in state 1. Okay, with different probability, for different probability. And the numbers here are not well put, but you can easily see which number is on which edge. Why that? Because you need to sum of the outputs. Sum of the outputs, it should be 1. Right? Sum of the outputs should be 1. Then on this graph, you can easily tell the probability to observe A will be these 2 numbers, right? Because it needs to sum up to 1. Okay. So if you are at state 1, you have 80% of a chance to observe A, 20% of a chance to observe B. All the other states are similar, right? So for state 2, state 3, you can tell. And the current observation is BABC. Current observation is a BABC. We don't care what is BABC. Right? This is just a hypothesis example. And you know the initial setup is you are at state 1, 100% at state 1. The question is, which kind of X will maximize what you observe? Right? What is Zi? Zi is this guy. Okay. What will be the sequence that maximize the probability to observe BABC? In other words, like you observe BABC, you tell me what's the transition of the hidden states. What's the transition of the hidden states? Okay, and this problem is interesting because you only know the current states, and then you want to know what happened next. You want to know what happened next based on the observation. This can be solved in a polynomial complexity. And how do we solve that? This is solved by the Viterbi algorithm, right? So the first time you see a B, right? Here you see BABC, right? BABC. First time you see the B. And that doesn't change much, right? Because you already know the initial states is 1, 0, 0. The initial states is you at state 1. So then you do what? You multiply with A matrix. Okay? With the A matrix. By multiplying with A matrix, you observe what? So previously I'm at state 1. So the next stage, 80% of a chance I will be transit to state 2. Okay? Then what happens for the rest 20%? 80% of chance I will go to state 2. Then the rest 20% of chance I will do what? I will be capping state 1, right? This is the other 20%, right? Okay. Okay, if this is the case, then after this A, the model will be updated, right? Updated to this case. This is easy. You just read that from the graph. 80% of chance to go to 2, 20% I will stay in 1, no chance to be on state 3. There's no chance to stay on state 3. And now you have observation, right? You observe A. You observe A, then what will happen? Right? You observe A, then what will happen? if you have 20% of a chance to stay at what 20% of a chance you stay at state 1, then observation of A is what 0.2, 20% of a chance times 0.8. Right? We can observe A. Right? We can observe A. And observation of A is a fact, right? It's a fact. It's not random because you know the second case is A. Okay. And if you are in the second step, the second state, then the observation of A is what? 0.1, right? 0.1. So means what? You have 80% of a chance to stay at state 2 multiplied by 0.1. Okay? So what are we really computing here? We're computing what is the state, and then what? Then what's the observation given the state? Okay? Why that? Because this is the joint distribution of P, X, and Z. Note that X, Z, they are all lowercase, right? They're just the values. So by comparing these two numbers, you get what? You get 2 to 1, right? 2 to 1. 2 to 1. If you normalize this 2 to 1 over 3 states, right? Over these 3 states, you get this. Right? Of course, the case for C is 0 times 0, right? You get 0. Right? It's 2 to 1 to 0. Right? You can normalize this ratio, and finally you have 0.667, 0.333, and 0. Right? This is exactly this one. Right? This one. Okay. Then you do the similar thing in the following computation, and now you observe B, and then you observe C. Right? You know how to do the computation, right? Simple. And you know, okay. Finally, the states are quite likely to be state 3 because you have a 96% of a chance, right? 96% of a chance, and you can follow back, right? Trace back. You know, this is the most likely sequence 1, 1, 2, 3. Okay, 1, 1, 2, 3. So here there is a important question or interesting question is why we can use this guy. Why can we use this guy? The joint distribution to represent what? Represent the X given Z. Right? That's the things we are actually doing. Why we can do that? We can do that because it's proportional to this, right? Proportional to this because the P of X given Z is P of XZ over P of Z. We don't care about what is P of Z. Why that? Because we simply normalize it. We have this result of the joint distribution, right? So this step is to divide by this 1 over the P of Z, right? We don't know about the P of Z. It doesn't matter. Right? We just have a normalized version is fine, right? So this is the reason we can use the joint distribution to approximate this posterior, right? This posterior. Okay, this is quite useful, and we use this kind of techniques everywhere. So for the diagnostic reasoning, getting this posterior is difficult, but actually it's not that difficult if you take the joint distribution, right? Use the joint distribution and then normalize the joint distribution, you will get the posterior. Good. That's the another example. another example. So from this example, up to now, previous page we introduced the prediction over the graph, right? Now this page we introduced the Viterbi algorithm. Okay. And then where can we use such a model? Where can we use such a model? I will give you two examples. One example is a PhD work done by Xavier Perrin. Is my friend, graduated in 2009. He works on the semi-autonomous navigation of assisted robots using the BMI interface. And another work done by Dizan Vasquez, and he was at that time he was a postdoc in the lab. So we have been talking about the HMM model a lot. So first to give you the example of Dizan, I will also upload this file later. So, okay. Okay. As I mentioned, this part of work is to use HMM model to solve some real robotic problem, especially in the location related or tracking related problems, because you don't have actual control to the system, right? You only have a 30% view. So this is about the motion prediction with the figure Markov model. The problem we try to solve here is to predict the motion of pedestrians and vehicles from the sensor reading. And especially if you have a camera set on the traffic crossings to see how multiple roads, right? This is the complex crossing. And we want to predict what will happen to this car in the next step. Right? The next step. We don't want to do the prediction purely based on OT, right? We want to based on from T up to T plus something, right? We want to use a sequence of observations to predict what will happen for this X from T to T plus n. Okay, that's why it's a prediction problem. It's not only predict by a current view, but it's also with a sequence. That's related to many sub questions like motion planning, object recognition, like integrated with car, or the scene interpretation, right? Related to all these problems. That's a typical problem of autonomous driving. How can we model this this problem? You know, you don't have actual active control to the car, right? You can only do prediction. So what you observe is from your sensor. The sensor can be some LiDAR or camera on the vehicle, and can also be something from V2X device. What you observe is the positions, right? Or you call that the poses, right? If you include the heading of the vehicle. And another thing you have is the prediction, right? Where is the vehicle? Nothing is a prediction. So they're not the same concept, right? Although these are all represented in the coordinates of x and y. That means you have a location on the map. You have a location on the map, but actually they don't refer to the same random variable. Okay, like you have observations based on the history of the trajectory. This is the observation, and the prediction is what will happen next. So they are the same units in the same space, but they are not the same random variable. So it's important to model the problem as a Bayes equation. So a dynamic approach is if you know the previous states, and you want to predict what's happened to the next is nothing else than the double integral over the acceleration. Double integral over the acceleration. When it's a linear motion, then the idea is you want to estimate the states using the motion equation for the prediction. What is the prediction? What is prediction in terms of the HMM model? This is a transition model, right? Because we want to know the xt plus h based on the xt. Do you have the control? No, you don't have the control, right? You cannot actively control the vehicle. So the only thing you have is this guy, right? That's why it's a prediction. How can we get this prediction? If you know the A matrix, a similar A matrix, then this prediction is easy. Right? Just A times P, you get the updated P. And this guy, this prediction can be done with a Kalman filter as well. As well. It's with a good accuracy in a short time horizon. Because objects will follow physical laws, but the motion will depend on other factors. It depends on the perception. If there's an obstacle, you need to avoid the obstacle, and if there's a lanes, you need to follow the traffic the traffic routes. Okay, you have many constraints, so you cannot do the prediction purely based on the motion model. Okay. No, this doesn't work, right? Doesn't work. It cannot hit into the wall. So the idea is to emulate the object decision process. And that decision process, as we said, it's a dynamic progress, right? Dynamic progress. So we want to do what? We will observe a lot of historical data. Right? We collect all this data. So that's some data collection from a parking lot. Right? The cars come in from the right side. That's where the car comes from parking lots, and it may take all these trajectories and release different probabilities. We need to compromise from the learned model, and then the prediction of the learned model, like this one, of the predictions based on the current observation. Now, how can we model that? The simple model is a point sequence. But for point sequence, you have so many trajectories, right? So we need to do the clustering. Right? We need to cluster all these possible trajectories into typical solutions, right? Then this clustering problem becomes a classification problem, right? This is clustering. The final result gives you classification. Because given what you observe from the car, I want to identify which roads. Maybe it's a red, it's a green, it's the brownish, the orange roads. I want to know this. So this X, in this case, previously it's like in a continuous space, a sample from continuous space. Now it becomes a classification problem. Right? I just don't know which road I'm taking. Then this initially, this clustering you need to consider from the entire trajectory and similarity measure, and then merge them. Okay, I will skip the details. And finally, you get all these states. From trajectory to clustered trajectory, and then finally you get this discrete states. And now you have the complete model of the possible trajectories. Then what will happen next is the HMM, right? This algorithm part is the simplest part, as long as you have the model. So we know HMM from the previous lecture already. It's nothing else than a dynamic based filter without any control. no control. Control variables are only heat. And if this is the environment we want to look at, if this is the environment we look at, the green dots, they are the discrete positions we can sample, right? Sample from the trajectory. We can look into them. And the transition from one state to another, that's something you can do. You can use the transition model. Right? Based on the previous states, you have higher probability to move to the next one along the time sequence. Okay, as a prior, because you have some observation ambiguity, right? Uncertainties, and then the initial state can be this guy, this one. There is a slight typo. It should be 8. Otherwise, they're not summing up to 1. Maybe the things are on the rest. Okay. So here is initial state. And at some given position, you have this transition probability. You have maybe a little bit higher chance to move to the right, lower probability to come to the left. And the actual observation is from what? From the sensors, right? From GPS, from LiDAR, camera. And anyway, you have a pose estimation for the vehicle, right? That's the actual observations. You see that this actual observation is not on the states, right? Theoretically, it will not be on the states. It will not be on the states, right? Because the state is something you abstract from the historical data, right? Like you can extract this data from the lanes. You have multiple lane roads, and then you draw these lines from the high definite map. But the actual car position will not be exactly on the state. Then what you can do? You will assign a observation probability. What's that? That's the emission model, right? That's the emission model. Also, emission model is this one, right? This is an emission model. Okay. That's also explained why initially you don't have a good assumption to the position, right? Because it's not assigned to any of the precise states. What happened next? Next is to consider this process in a dynamic progress, and then you have state estimation. Basically, the size of the circle shows the probability. Right? You have high probability initially at the first stage, high probability, and that's the observation. You can assign the observation based on the observation. You use a likelihood, compile your likelihoods. What is likelihood? If this is x, this is O, then the PO given x, this is the likelihood, right? That means at given the states, what's the possibility of this is likelihood? And this is easy to get, right? Easy. Why is this easy? If you know where you are, if you know the x is defined here, how can you find the probability of O? How? Any ideas? If you have any idea, please let me know. Anyone want to say something? How can you get this likelihood? You can raise your hand. Or you click yes if you want to say something. No? Nobody? Anyone want to try? Anyone want to try that? So how can you describe this likelihood, P O given X? If you know X is here, then what's the probability or the distribution of observing such a O? How can you do that? Maybe a Gaussian? Yeah, very good. Maybe a Gaussian, yeah? You can have a two-dimensional Gaussian distribution, right? Two-dimensional Gaussian distribution. How do you define the Gaussian? Can you further elaborate? So you can choose the mean of the Gaussian as a state, right? That's the mean. And then I will define my Gaussian distribution. The Gaussian distribution. And then what's your current observation? Current observation is nothing else than the points, right? Given these points, you must have a probability. Right? You will have a probability. Okay, that probability will be PO given X. Right? Given this position, what's the probability to have such an observation O? Right? That's the likelihood. Okay. Given the X, given the states, this should be in the states. Then what's the probability of this O? Then this is easy, right? It's two-dimensional Gaussian. We'll solve that. So this solution is not enough, right? Not enough. What we need is actually this guy, right? This guy. So what's that? It's proportional to the joint distribution, also proportional to the likelihood times the px. Okay. Then everything now will come back together, right? Come together. So you have three green dots. So we know that we need the joint distribution, right? We need the joint distribution Pxo proportional to the Px and the Po in X. We know this, right? We want that. And what is the Px? Px is nothing else than these three circles. These three circles. And for each case in the Px, we will design a Gaussian distribution, right? A Gaussian distribution. And then given the current position, you will compute for the first Gaussian, second Gaussian, third Gaussian. What's the case, right? What's the case for that? So you can marginalize out all the three pieces, so you will get the joint distribution. Okay, so this is clear. So what happens in fact is as follows, right? Okay, when it moves, then every stage will update, right? Stage will update. Then we do the prediction. Right? Here we need a prediction. How can we do the prediction? The prediction from the history data, right? We need to record the data, maybe this causing, we record data over days or over several hours. Also depends on the traffic rules, right? Maybe for the right side prior system, you have higher probability to move right? Like in Hong Kong, you have higher probability to move left. Okay, and then this system can work on its own, right? So we can see that the whole structure is a graph topology. It's a graph topology, and we use HMM over this graph topology. Okay, the number of the discrete states in this case it's the number of these green dots, and we need these parameters. Right? The parameters are also from the definition of HMF. Okay, Then the rest are easy. Right? It's just the solution or the inference over the HMM. You can use a so-called forward algorithm for the prediction, backward algorithm for the regeneration of the observations, and then the smoothing, the so-called forward backward algorithm, to filter out the actual position of the vehicle. Later we can quickly introduce this algorithm. And if you only have data, you don't have the model, then you use the Baum-Welsh algorithm. It's a specialized EM, expectation maximization. Probably some of you know about EM from other machine learning lecture, and that will convert to a local minimum of the likelihood. Okay. How can we compute that? We can use expected transitions over the expected number of time states to update the A. And secondly, for the observation model, we can use the expected number of time in the state in observing O over the expected number of time in state I to compute this simulation model, observation model. Okay. And that's some update rule. We can use structure expectation maximization to further help reduce the computation cost. Okay, so here are implementation details. And there are many examples where we can apply this model. So here is a dining hall. This is a dining hall of a university, right? We want to predict where the students, if they come to eat, and which roads they will take, right? So if we come from this entrance, they may exit to different stands, right? Or the food stand, right? Or the canteen. We can do the prediction as well, right? If you can trace the trajectory of the students. And the second example, the lower part, that's the prediction of if the car comes. If I keep tracking the motion of the car, we can predict where the car will park. We can predict where the car will park. Okay, then that's some demo. Hopefully this video can work. Let me check. Yeah, this is the dining hall example. You can see that with more and more data, we can train the transition model and the observation model. And that's for the vehicles, demo of the vehicles. I think the file is looping. Sorry. I can move to the next page. I think it's good enough. Next page is just about the challenges we cannot solve with this case. Let's skip that part. There's something wrong with the file. Okay. So that's the model. One of the application we can have for the model. A second model. Well, there is a question: how to label the data using camera? What do you mean by label the data? I think I explained the model completely. Right? If you have further question, you can ask me in other questions. Okay. We need trees to train the model. Yeah, we need trees to train the model. Ah, yeah. Where does it come? It comes from camera. It comes from camera. It comes from the camera on the vehicle. It comes from the camera on the V2X equipment. Okay, good. Another example is the use of BMI. BMI means brain-machine interface. Brain-machine interface nowadays is still quite hot research topic. This work I helped about the navigation back in 2008. Um, so the overall motivation is we have a semi-autonomous navigation system for a wheelchair. This wheelchair can take the low throughput interface. Low throughput interface in this special example is called BMI, brain machine interface. And nowadays, you may heard of some of the research, even some of you from the group of birds. Your group are actually doing a lot of research on BMI. Also, the group of Yvonne working so much on BMI, right? And you know, it's still a challenging problem, right? It's still a challenging problem to explain. That means to decode what happens in the human brain, right? What from the signal from the brain to decode that to, for example, a flow number, right? Flow number. So this is still quite difficult problem, right? There are certain applications like some people can use the implant ICs, devices to get a better measurements from the brain, but still the problem is unsolved. There are examples that this problem is not totally solved. But the motivation is clear, right? So the aim is to help people with intelligent robots, especially for those people who cannot move anything, right? Cannot move muscles. There is a special disease, right? Special disease for this phenomenon, like Stephen Hawking does this, right? So the idea is because the patients, even they sit on a wheelchair, they sit on the wheelchair, they cannot move anything, right? So even you provide a gamepad here, it doesn't work, right? Because they cannot move the hand. And even they cannot move their eyeballs. Because you know some of the research we have been doing is by the eye gaze tracking, right? Gaze tracking. Some of the devices can do that, right? Use eyes to look at different position, and we can have gaze tracker to know where we're looking at, and then use that to generate command. So the worst case is that will not work, right? Because no muscles will work. Then what we can do, right? The only option we have is to translate the BMI signal, right? To translate the BMI signal. Especially, we want to convert the BMI raw signal to something like intention. Right? You know, this is a quite challenging problem, right? Quite challenging problem. But this problem can be simplified with a proper application background, and this problem can be simplified. That can be assisted with the navigation technology of mobile robots. For example, SLAM and the point-to-point navigation, SLAM navigation. So if the vehicle can move automatically from point A to point B, if the vehicle can do this by itself, so the robot can do this already. And then what is important? What is important is simply, how can I know about this B? How can I know about this B? If you can tell me a proper B, and then the robot will take care of the motion. Okay, that's the motivation. Right? That's the motivation. So we think of this problem for a long time, and finally, we had the idea of the solution. The solution is, I'm not there yet. The solution is we want to grant a topological navigation. A topological navigation. That means if you have a this wheelchair come to topological change. If you detect topological change, I will propose a question. I will propose a question. And the answer to the question is simply yes or no. Right? Simply yes or no. And you know that from BMI, if we want to get some high precision control, this is not possible. So far, it's not possible. But it's possible to get some Boolean decisions. What else has been found is from the BMI signal, I forget which channel or which electrode, finally, there is a slight feature. There is some feature you can extract from the BMI raw signal to detect the negativeness. Right? If you consider something negatively, and there is a special pattern, then we use this pattern to help detect this false. There's no answer. If your system can propose a question, and then the subject can use the BMI Hammett, you don't need to do the implant, you use the Hammett. And this Hammett help you to detect the negativeness of your answer, and a certain level, you can detect, okay, this is a false answer. This is a no. And then you can use that to guide the wheelchair to do the navigation. Okay. And when you put this in the real application, it's more like this. There's something wrong on my side. Let's draw a easier version. Okay, if you start from here and you want to change the direction, right? You detect first. You detect a type of topological change, right? Here I can turn left or turn right, and then I will propose a question, right? Do you want to turn left? Probably the guy think of no, right? Then I will detect this signal. I will propose another question, right? Do you want to turn right? And then the guy will think of an answer. And if that's a no again, probably this guy just want to come back, right? Or just stay somewhere. Then keep on asking questions. Asking questions. Then you ask question again and again. Finally, if there is a decision, and then you will do the execution. Right? Execution to the wheelchair. So if the guy want to go here, then how many questions do you need to propose? How many questions do you propose? Because you need to make decisions here. Also, you need to make another decisions. If you're here, you see, okay, there is a topological change. You have multiple choices. And again, multiple choices. And finally, you can arrive to this position, right? So what affects this efficiency is only about a good question. Right? Good questions. You need good questions to make sure that a system like this can work with a high enough efficiency. So if you can combine some background prior knowledge, let's say a time of day or the previous goal, or the previous decisions, the current location. So many contexts. Right? Sorry, I forced you erase everything. And based on all this, you will have the good questions. Good questions. That will be the key. The good question will be the key. Now, how can we get good questions? Only depends on whether you can arrive to this goal, whether you can go to this goal, get this question earlier enough. Right? If you can get this question early enough, you can quickly propose this question, and then if the patient said, yes, I will want to go to star, and then you don't need to bother at each topological change, okay? Along the road, you may have a lot of topological changes. If I can directly propose a question, do you want to go to there? And then the problem is easy, right? But that question is hidden, right? This is latent. Why is latent? Because the patients or the subjects cannot speak, right? Cannot move any muscle, cannot identify, cannot tell you, explicitly tell you where they want to go, he or she want to go. So this question is latent. So this is a perfect place for us to model it as a latent model, and all your observations will be the BMI signal as an input to the system. Also, we want to predict what's the latent goal. What is this latent goal given your sequence of the BMI readings, and also your current location and your previous goal and time of day, any of these, the final solution is nothing else than this star, right? If I can find this star the earlier, then I can solve this problem earlier, right? Then the rest just give it to the navigation system or the vehicle. Okay. So all these discussions is about how can we model such a system, right? How can we model such a system? Good. We have 10 minutes. Hopefully we can finish. How to make a map inside the user. It's like you should think of the application scenario. For example, we have one guy from the university want to use this system. So this guy already know about the environment, right? And a navigation system, the SLAM system, will create a map. So the wheelchair, like here we have a LiDAR. Here's a LiDAR. This LiDAR can help to create the map. So the robot knows where it is, and robot knows how the map looks like. Also, the user knows about the map in his own mind, right? Knows about the map in the mind. So you just let the robot move. It starts to move, and then when there is a certain topological change, then you will start to propose questions. Okay, so how the user knows about the map is not an issue, because the user just working in this environment without this wheelchair. He has other wheelchairs, or other people will carry the user around. Right? He can recognize the situation. Good. Thank you for the question. Okay, then how can we model the problem, right? It looks like it's a Markov decision process, right? Looks like it's a Markov decision process. You have a state, and you have some actions. You have some actions. You have some observable, essentially dedicated locations, right? Dedicated locations. And you have many correlations, dependencies. For example, the goals, right? So that's your action. based on your current goal, like during this process, the user may change their goal from time to time. From the current goal, this is hidden, right? This is latent. There will be action, right? There's an action. And if you reach the goal, there will be whether the goal has been reached. Right? This is arbiter, right? Whether the goal is reached. And then you have a current state. Right? The state will transit a long time. Okay. Yeah, I don't need to clean this one. So you have some previous states with action, then this action is observable. This action is observable. And we want to, given the states and the action, we want to search for the next action and the next goal. Right. Given the current states and action, I want to search for the next action and next goal. Okay, this is the definition of the overall problem. And then how can we do that? How can we do that? Easy, right? So you have this graph model. Right? This graph is even DAG. Right? With this DAG model, we write out the joint distribution with all the random variables. All the random variables. We start with the nodes without any parents. So not this one. Yeah. Start with the two nodes without parents. And then use the following the directional arrows, we list out all the conditional probability. We have the joint distribution. Right? So then the inference of the action is by what? What is this for process? The total probability. Right? This is the total probability. You sum out over all these states. You don't have information, or you don't care, and then normalize it across the evidence, right? Because this part is the evidence, right? Evidence is a P of this guy, right? That's the evidence. It will not change no matter what is the next action. Right? So this inference will work by normalization over Z. So inside is nothing else than joint distribution and marginalization. Okay, this is clear. And if we introduce further conditions, like I mentioned, if the phone rings, probably the answer is to go to the phone. Right? And if time of day, it's during coffee hour, and probably the goal is I want to go to the coffee room. Right? Or the last goal, like yesterday, sorry, the last goal in the previous mission go where, then there must be some consequent actions. Some of the events are in a consequence. Okay. So all these can be taken as a concept as well. So we can add on these random variables. So we can have a more complete Go model. We can have a Go model. Good. In this case, your known variable has been extended, right? Because the phone ring, time of day, this, so you can obtain those from other sensors or whatever. What is important is this one. Right? This one is important. This one is important. For the robotic system, A is more important, right? Because that's finally you need to perform that on the real system. And that's the latent variable. G is the latent. This is the key for all your future deduction. Okay. And then by adding these variables, and now you have even more complete model. So not much a big difference. So when we apply the system to the real robots, so we find some difficulty. The difficulty is the environment is too big. Right? Environment too big, and if we have the discrete goals, so many of these discrete goals, right? We need to write out a complex joint distribution among all the positions. So we further segment that into topological regions. We call that middle goals, MG. So we segment the area into different parts. We will first infer whether the user will go to a special part, and then from that special part to further infer the GT. Right? You know MGT. From MGT, you can build a model to learn GT. Okay. And all these models need to be learned. Basically, the transition. Sorry. These transitions, right? These transitions need to either you have an assumption, what is the distribution for each of the components? Now, what's the distribution of this? If G is a discrete, probably you use a multivariable, like a digit distribution. And some of the motion models probably is simply a Gaussian. Right? And taking some example, for example, the this one, I pick an easy one. So the P of RT given GT ST, it means what? It means whether I have reached the goal, right? Whether I have reached the goal. If I reach the goal, then RT is a higher probability. And then I need to know what is the current goal and what is the current state. And that means, can you determine I'm currently here? Actually, the goal is here. Can I consider this is already a reach? Did I reach the goal? This is the probability, right? It's a probability. So it can be what? It can be a Gaussian, right? It can be a Gaussian. So if you're close to zero, then the probability will increase, right? Actually, the sigma is quite small, right? The mean is 0. Then this is the Gaussian. Okay, this distribution, conditional distribution, is a Gaussian. If you want to write out, then it's just 1 over 2 pi theta, and then e to the power minus. Here, our part is this part is important, so it's we can use the absolute difference between the goal minus the s, right? Minus the s squared. Okay, something like this. So for each part, you need to assign or assume distribution. Right? This is the spirit of Bayesian. Right? For all the Bayesian algorithm, that's normal, right? Some of these parameters, like how big is this sigma? Well, who knows, right? I would say maybe 0.1 meter or centimeter. So depends on your assumption, right? Okay. Okay, the time is over, and think pretty much about this. So if you have knowledge about this model, and you can imagine in the future, if you sit into an autonomous driving car, probably the car will directly ask you, right? Do you want to go home? And if the time of day is this is a work of time, then you can probably answer yes. So that's the power of the Bayesian learning. And how do you learn this model? It depends on the data. Right? You need some training data for the from the actual user. Good. I think this is all for today. Next week, we further introduce the HMM model, but we won't spend too much time because you have learned, some of you learned this model from other courses as well. I will do some easy deduction of the equations. What is important is to model itself, right? The model itself is not about the inference. I will give you also some code example. How can we generate 4 states with Gaussian mixed model as a hidden states, and then how the transition can happen among all these states. Okay. When will we have quiz or midterm? The thing is, I don't know how can we have quiz. Like typically, today's question should be a quiz. Then let's see. Let's see. We don't know what happens in a month, right? Okay. Okay. Thank you, and see you next time. Bye. 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 Bye.